The first step is to cut and prepare all of your pattern pieces. So here I have my interior bottom, my interior top. I have all of my Peltex pieces, my ID window, my zipper tabs, my wrist strap attachment. I have 2 zipper pouch linings, 1 ID window backing, my wrist strap, my zipper, and finally my exterior. So the first step is we need to transfer all of our fold lines. So that's going to be all of these dashed lines on all of our pattern pieces. So I'm going to start with my exterior, and you can see I've already branded mine. So my flap is up here, and I'm just going to mark that. So this is going to be the top. And so I'm just going to use the measurements. So 3.25 inches or 8.25 centimeters, and I'm going to mark that on my exterior here. And then you need to go down to 4.25. Then we're going to go all the way down to 8.25. 8.25. And then finally 9.25. And then if it's going to help you, you can transfer these bolded titles. It might help you later on, but I find that just denoting the top, it works fine for me. Since I'm here, I'm also going to mark where my magnetic snaps are going to go. So there is that. So this is my exterior prepped and ready. So now I just need to move on. I'm going to do, this is my interior bottom. And again, I'm just going to, since this is technically the top of the piece, the zipper pouch edge, I'm going to just mark that here. So zipper. And then again, I'm just going to take the measurements on the dash lines and transfer them onto this piece. So 3 inches for the first one. 3.5. And then down to 6.5. And then we're going to 9.5. It's 3.5 from that line. And then those fold lines. And now I just need to mark my interior top fold lines. And so again, I'm just going to mark where my magnetic snaps are. And then do the same marks. 3.25, 4.25, down to 8, and then 11. It's going to be 3 inches from the 8-inch line, 14, and 14.5. And then on these folds, because there are so many, I'm just going to mark them. So this is the first fold, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And that'll help later on in the construction process. I'm actually going to go back and do that on my interior bottom as well. And then on the exterior, it's pretty self-explanatory once we get going. At this point, if you wanted to, you could where on the exterior piece, where your top flap would be, this first 3.25 inches, if you wanted to angle it or do something funky or do your corners or what have you, you could do that now. Or you could just leave it square and it'll make a nice angular wallet. I am going to fold these two pieces, or my two short edges together, and then I'm gonna do my corners like I always do on everything that I make. And then later in the construction process, once we start laying all of our panels together, we will match the corners on the interior. So now we are on step 3, and we need to prepare our interior top piece. I've found that the easiest way for me to do it is I have poked holes. You can see my paper's all crinkled from using it, but I've poked holes on these lines here. These are the card slot lines. Or you can just use the measurements that are provided in the pattern here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay, so my interior top is wrong side up, and I'm gonna lay my pattern piece on top, making sure that all the edges meet up. And then I'm just gonna mark these holes that I cut out with my hole punch. Now, having holes is totally up to you. The line or the card slots work just fine without the holes at the ends. It's just an aesthetic thing for me. So there you go. So now you can see these are where all of my card slots are going to be. And I'm going to use my hole punch and punch out these holes. If you don't want to do that, you could just skip ahead, and basically you're just going to cut out all of the lines, and you can use an X-Acto knife, a rotary cutter, or a pair of scissors, whatever's easiest for you. Okay, so I've got all of my holes cut, and now I'm just going to connect the dots and cut my lines. All right, so whenever I cut with my rotary cutter, a lot of times I don't make it all the way. Oh, wow. It's the first time for everything. Let's check this side. So a lot of times I don't get it all the way to the dot, and you want to make sure that that this is fully cut, or else the card won't fit. And yeah, you will have an unhappy customer if you're going to sell these. To create the recessed card slots, you need to gather your ribbon, and I'm going to be using landscaping fabric. I get this, or you can get it from any home stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, or a gardening shop, and it is just weed barrier fabric. It's incredibly thin and really strong, and it doesn't really stretch very much. I just have found it to be perfect for this recessed card application. It only comes in 36 inches long, so you'll need to have another shorter piece, and we'll have to piece them later as we are making the card slots, or you can go ahead and sew them together now if you're using landscape fabric. And the other thing is, so you can glue your card slots into place as you go, or if you want to, you can take double stick tape and stick it below every card slot now, and it'll make the next process, oops, whoa, a little quicker. You'll see I'm not doing double stick tape across the whole length of the card slots. It's not necessary. Now, if you did not want to sew your card slots into place, you would need to go the whole length just to ensure durability and long run use. But I'm going to be sewing my card slots into place, so I'm not concerned. I just need this double stick tape to hold my fabric in place while I'm top stitching. And then you're going to do one above the card slot as well. Okie doke. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work from the 7th card slot. We start at the bottom to create the recessed slots. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the double stick tape off. Or if you're using glue, you would just apply glue across the bottom. And then I'm going to lay it like this first. And then once I stitch it, it'll flip down and it'll have a nice finished edge there. So I'm going to move to the machine and we are going to work on the step to create the recessed card slots. To do this, you need to gather your accordion fold template. My printer wouldn't work, so I had to print it on my label paper, so it's a bit washed out, but that does not matter. Anyway, so you're going to have this, and so we have our first piece prepped, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it right side up, and I'm going to stitch just along this line, right underneath this line, and what that's going to do is it's going to catch this barrier fabric to create the recessed card slot. So there is, can you see it? My thread matches this cork so perfectly. But yeah, so there is the first line there. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it right side down. We're gonna pull our card slot fabric back, because it was like this. So we're gonna flip it and pull it back like this. And then what we're gonna do is you take your accordion fold template and align the top edge with the next line. So like right on, let's see if I can show you. I need to get a better camera set up. So right on the second line here, you're going to line up the top edge of the accordion fold template to the line. So this is down, line this up to the top edge here, and then you're going to take your fabric and you're going to fold it up and over, and then carefully slide it out while holding your fold line down here. This takes a little bit of dexterity. And then I'm going to unpick my double stick tape and lay my ribbon where it needs to go. It's going to be at an angle. You want to make sure that you're laying it straight, so center it in between the two ends of your card slots. And then what I'm going to do, because I'm top stitching, I'm going to flip the panel back over and stitch along that line. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to flip it back over, and now we're just going to do the same process for the rest of the card slots. And so when you're flipping it, what I like to do is hold everything in place, so that way these don't get all cattywampus and get all messed up, and you don't accidentally stitch it incorrectly. right, so you can see that I'm short. So what I'm gonna do, well, I'm short in real life too, but I'm short on card slots. I have 2 more to go here, so I'm gonna grab that additional piece and I'm gonna piece this together and then keep it going. Now I'm just going to keep going just as if it was the same piece. All right, so I'm going to go back and trim all my threads at once. Okay, so I am now to the last card slot here. You can see back here. Oh, there we go. So I just need to make this last card slot, but as outlined in the directions, you do not stitch it down up here. So that's why we put this double stick tape. So I'm going to use, oh no, it's not gonna be long enough. Hold on. I figured I would move over here. I know that you can hear me better because I'm closer to the mic, and then also it's a flat area. So I had to go back and piece one more time with another piece of the barrier fabric to make it long enough. But anyway, so we are here. We're at the last card slot. We've got the rest all stitched. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back. And I'm going to use my accordion fold template the same way, but I'm going to leave 1/4 of an inch right here. Most of the time I just eyeball it, but you know, you can measure it if you want. But so you want a 0.25 gap here, and then I'm going to do the same as before, fold up and over. And then lay that there. And so now I just need to trim off the excess. So I like to fold it back and trim like that. And so there we go. There are our recessed card slots for the interior top. So now we need to crease all of our lines. Right, we're really only working with these lines here, but you know, might as well since we're here. So I'm just gonna take my ruler, line it up on those lines, and just run my nails across it, finger press them so that they crease. Be a bit hard to run your nails on this one because your hand gets caught in all the card slots. Just do what you can. All right, I just need to finger press these last 2 lines 5 and 6. Okay, so the next step that we do is I'm gonna hold these card slots in place by just reaching around. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold on this line 4 and encase our card slots. And then we're gonna clip it into place. Next thing that we need to do, this is going to be the top edge of the card slots, so we need to go across and top stitch just along here. But because I want to mirror the angled corners, I'm going to cut mine before I go. Okay, so now I'm going to pop back over to the machine and I'm just going to top stitch just along this line here. So now we have a nice crisp edge, and that's encasing our card slots. Alrighty, so I'm gonna take my clips off and I'm gonna flip it so that my card slots are face down. I'm gonna grab this top raw edge here and I'm gonna fold it back towards me, and I'm gonna line up lines 3 and 5. And because we'd already creased line 3, you should notice that it folds down nicely and easily. And then when you flip it, this is what's gonna later be the cash slot. So for now, to hold it in place, what I'm gonna do is glue up the short sides, or if you want to, you can use double stick tape, but my machine does not like to sew through double stick tape. So I'm just gonna glue mine into place here. And you wanna make sure that your raw edges on the right and left sides are nice and even. The last things that we need to do to finish our interior top is we need to install our wrist strap attachment. So I grab my attachment and we need to mark 0.75 inches in from each short edge. And then what I'm gonna do is apply some glue here before I slide my D-rings on. And then grab one D-ring, slide it up to that line that you made, and then fold the short edge over. And then we're just gonna clip it into place and allow that glue to dry. And do the same for the other side. While this glue is setting, I'm going to grab another piece of double stick tape, and I'm going to put double stick tape across just down the center, because like I said before, my machine does not like to sew through double stick tape, so I'm just going to put this on there to hold it into place before I sew it. And so I'm going to stick it across the whole length of my strap attachment. Cut this little tail off here. And then what we need to do is it's going to go in between line 1 and line 2. So I'm going to just transfer those with chalk to the front of my interior top, but I need to go find my chalk. Sorry, I accidentally threw it across the room earlier. And of course, you only realize that whenever you need it. So I'm just going to mark those first 2 lines just like I did on the back, but I'm just going to use the chalk marking on the front, so that way I can have a forward visual of where it needs to go. So 3.25 and 4.25. So now I know that that is where my wrist strap attachment is going to go, and eventually what it's going to do, this is going to be the inside of the wallet, and so the wrist strap attachment is going to be folded up inside there, just to give you an idea. So now I'm going to peel off my double stick tape. You could also use glue for this, or you could just use sew tights or anything that's going to hold it in place here. And so what I'm going to do is just eyeball it, and what I'm looking at is the distance of my D-rings from the side of the wallet, and then also where it rests in between my 2 chalk lines here. And this is got a little bit of cork overhang here. Stick that. There we go. So now it is nice and straight and within my chalk lines, and what I need to do is go stitch it at the machine. And so when I start, I'm going to leave my tails and I'm going to pull them through to the back, so that way you don't see a bunch of back stitching up here. Just started doing that. Feel fancy about it. But I'm just going to start stitching, stitch across, and then when I get over here, I'm going to stitch as close to this D-ring on the inside as I possibly can. And then you can use a hump jumper or a needle case or anything that will get your presser foot even with how tall the D-ring is. And then I'm going to sew just down the side, back across, back up, and you know, you get the drift. You can see I've got it all stitched down, and then I will show you how I'm going to pull these tails to the back and tie them off. Okay, so here are my tails. They're nice and long. I'm going to flip to the back. This might be a little bit of a challenge. Okay, there it is. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for me to tie this off because I didn't leave a long enough tail when I first started. But so you're just going to wiggle your threads until you see the loops come through, and then you're just going to pull it through to the back, and then you just tie it. Oh, it's like I cannot see. It's all the same color. And then sometimes I like to also just add a little bit of glue for extra strength. There, so you see I was able to get really, really close to that D-ring because I used my needle case to make my foot the same height. Alrighty, so last step is we need to install our magnetic snaps. I have my transfer lines from earlier, or my transfer dots, and now I'm just going to install these like normal. All right, if you want to, at this point, you can install scrap pieces of interfacing to hold these into place, but I'm not super concerned with it because later on it will be glued down to the Peltex once we attach this to the exterior. But for now, this is the interior top and it is done, so we're going to set this aside for now and start working on our interior bottom. All right, so for this next step, I have my pattern piece, and then I have this vinyl window on the ready because this is going to be coming up soon. So I'm going to lay my pattern piece onto the wrong side of my textile, and I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to transfer all these holes, and I'm going to draw this box line, or I'm going to draw this ID window box, and then I'm going to cut all the lines and cut the box out. Again, if you don't want to use your pattern piece as a template, you can refer to the pattern. It has all of the measurements written out. Okay. I'm just cutting out my ID box right now. So there's that cut out, and then now, same as before, I'm gonna go through and punch all the holes out. And now to connect the dots. Okie doke. So now we need to glue in our ID window. There it is. And so I'm just going to apply glue all around the open ID box. And then I'm going to lay my ID window with a 1/4 inch overlap around all 4 sides, apply some pressure, and then I need to let the glue set. So I'm going to move over to the machine, and we are going to stitch from the right side all the way around this ID box, and then we're also going to stitch underneath the last card slot here. This bottom card slot is going to be the entry point for the ID or whatever is going to go in this window here. And so if you are stitching all of your card slots together, you want to make sure that you stitch here as a faux card line, just for continuity's sake. Got everything all stitched down, and I stitch underneath that last slot there as well. Okay, to complete the ID window, we need to glue in our ID window backing. And what we're gonna do, the reason that we stitched below this line is because we glue our ID window backing above that line. And so we're not gonna have access to stitch it later, which is why we do it now. And so I'm gonna apply glue underneath this second from bottom card slot, glue here across, down, and around, and then glue this into place, like so. And there we go. Now we have a cute little ID window. And moving right along, we are going to create our recessed card slots just like we did before. So I'm going to get some double stick tape and put it just below all the card slots. So just like before, I'm going to peel off just the bottom, take my card fabric and lay it on top of that, and then move to the machine and create all the slats. Okay, so at this step, again, don't forget your accordion fold template. But for now, what I need to do is I need to stitch this into place. So I'm going to flip the whole panel and stitch just above or just below that second from bottom slot, card slot. Okay. So now we are just going to move up the card slots just like we did on the interior top. So I'm going to fold the card slot material back, grab my accordion fold template, line up the top edge to the next card slot, fold it around it, peel my tape, and stick my material, and then flip top stitch. And then just keep it moving. Okay, so we are again to the last card slot here. Let's see back here. This is where we don't stitch. So just like before, we're going to do the same thing. We're just not going to stitch it into place. And again, we're going to leave the 1/4 inch seam right here from the top edge. There we go. And then now I just need to cut off my little extra here. Ta-da! All right, so just like we did with the interior top, now we need to go and create these creases along all of these lines just to help with folding. Okay, and so now here we are. We need to fold at the 3rd line. We're going to fold and encase our card slots. And it should be almost, if not exactly, you're folding this panel right in half. And then, just like before, we're going to go and we're going to top stitch just along this fold. I need to cut my little corner cuts. And then I'm going to pop to the machine and top stitch just along there. All right, so the next step is you need to, well, let me just say, I caught a mistake that I made. Whenever I was transferring my lines, line number 4, I did it only 3 inches wide, and it's supposed to be 3.5. So I'm going to measure 1/2 inch up and mark this. So this line 4, the black one is null and void. We're using the chalk line. So anyways, so after you top stitch this top line, you're gonna flip it so the raw edges are towards the top of the work table and your ID window and card slots are face down, and you're gonna fold. And this chalk line, remember, this chalk line would be fold number 4, but you're going to align fold number 4 with fold number 2, and you should see it'll be a natural fold once you flip it back. You'll realize that that's exactly where it wants to go. But so line 2 and 4 will meet up, and again, just ignore this permanent marker 4. So clip it, and then you'll see, just like before, it creates another cash slot. So now I'm gonna go, and just like I did, I'm gonna pull these threads first, but I'm gonna glue this into place. Make sure that all of your raw edges are nice and lined up. And there we go. So there is the interior bottom, and it is now complete. So I'm going to move the interior bottom out of the way. And next what we need to do is create our zipper. And so what we want is a zipper that in total length, including the tabs, is 7.5 inches wide. And so I'm going to glue one tab down. As you can see, I'm using a much longer zipper, and I'm just going to cut it down to size. But I'm just going to glue it down on the right side. I'm going to unzip. You want the zipper head to be on your left side. Unzip, and then I'm going to just make sure that I'm creating a zipper that is 7.5 inches wide from zip end to zip end. And now I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to top stitch these zip tabs into place. You might have noticed, but as I sew over my zipper teeth here, I do back stitch well, just to add some extra strength. Because then when the zipper is in use and the zipper is being flung open, it just gives it some extra oomph to hold it all together. So using some pinking shears, I'm just going to pull back on the zipper tab and trim my zipper down, leaving about a quarter to a half inch overlap on the back. Okay, so we need to grab our interior top and our zipper tab, and then one of our zipper pouch linings, and we are going to create the zipper pouch pocket zip, whatever, zip pouch pocket, I think is what it's called. So flip your top wrong side up. I'm going to apply glue. Again, you can use double stick tape here if you wanted to. Do whatever you like. And then what I'm going to do is, with my zipper head facing to my left, I'm going to just stick this on top. So raw edge of the interior top onto the zipper tape. Be sure to make sure that it's all straight. I don't know if I can say short any more times in that sentence, but you catch my drift. All right, let that set, and then we're going to flip the whole thing over. You want to make sure that your raw edges of your zip tabs are meeting up with your raw edges on the interior top. Flip it over and apply some glue along this bottom edge of the zipper here. And then now you're going to take your zipper lining, your pouch lining, and lay it right side down along the raw edge of the zip tape and glue into place. And you'll notice it's not as wide. So you just kind of eyeball it, center it, and then let the glue set up. And then when we go to the machine, we're gonna stitch down just across the interior top here and leaving the lining just like this. So that way we don't have to top stitch the lining. I don't know about you, but every time I try to top stitch lining, it just gets all super funky. And so I just avoid it altogether by doing it this way. So I'm gonna go to the machine and using a 1/8 seam allowance, stitch down this side of the zipper. Alrighty, so now that that is stitched down, you can see it's stitched down, and then along the back, we just stitched it into place here. And now I'm going to glue my lining down. So just apply a little bit of glue, and then you're gonna flip this to be wrong sides together. And then now with the glue, it won't shift and move on you, and it'll look nice whenever the wallet is done. There we go. So one side, now we need to attach the interior bottom to the zipper. We're gonna do it the same way. The glue is really gross. But so I'm gonna flip the interior bottom, apply some glue. We're gonna let the glue set up. I got glue all over my fingers. There we go. So the glue set, and then carefully flip, and then we're going to do the same thing. And put glue all along the bottom of the tape here, and then you're going to align the raw edges, the raw edge of your lining pouch, your zipper lining to the zipper tape. Leave it like this, and we're going to take it over to the machine, and we're going to stitch down the other side. Alrighty, so we got it all stitched, so you can see. And then we're gonna do the same thing like we did the other side and glue this side out of the way. Ta-da! So now we have one long piece, and this is going to be the interior. So now we need to make the actual zip pouch. And so I'm just gonna point this out. You can see my cork it's a little bit wider here, and my edges aren't perfect. And we are going to line those up next, after the next step. So what we're gonna do now that we're here is we're gonna pinch our zipper so that the zipper tape is at the top and fold it lining sides together. And you want to make sure that your raw edges are nice and even as possible. I know that mine has some overhang, but again, we'll fix that in just a minute. But so the important part is to make sure that your zipper is straight at the top here. And you're going to clip it into place. And I'm just going to flip it and make sure it's at the top. Yep, it still is. And so I'm just going to trim this down because it's kind of a big, oh, sorry if I just put my head in the way, kind of a big overhang here. There we go. And so now what we need to do is, the next step is we're going to stitch down and across the bottom, and it's going to create the zipper pouch, which you can probably see it starting to come together now. We're getting very close to the end. But so we need to stitch down the sides and across the bottom to create this pouch. But first we're going to draw our line so that we know where to stitch. And what you're going to do is you're going to measure from the folded zipper, you're going to measure 3 inches down and draw a line. And so when we go to the machine, I'm going to start at this top right corner. I'm going to sew down across my chalk line and then back up at the top. And then again, I do want my corners to be angled, so I'm just going to cut those now. This will be a bit bulky if you're doing this as well. It gets bulky in here because of the zipper tape and all of that. So just be careful when sewing. There we go. Now we've got our zipper pouch all ready to go. Alrighty, so we are looking like this now. The top, this is the flap. You can tell because it has the snaps and the wrist strap attachment. And then here's one cash slot, 7 card slots, and then on the opposite side, the other 7 card slots and the cash slot. And if you look at the diagram, that is right here. You can see my little note there. That diagram, this is what that is showing. Okie doke. So the next step that I'm going to do before I move on to combining the interior and exterior is I'm just going to trim down. You see I've got a little bit of overhang here. I'm going to trim down my zipper pocket now because otherwise it's just going to be a pain in the butt later. Alrighty. So there we go. Now we are done with the whole interior. Pretty cool. So I'm going to grab my exterior and I'm going to install my magnetic snaps before I go any farther so that way I don't forget. I feel like I spend half the time just looking for tools. That's what takes me so long to make stuff. All right, so this is the female portion. Okay, so this is what the exterior looks like now. And what we need to do to prepare the exterior for the final construction is we need to glue all of our Peltex into place. So I'm going to start with the 3.5 inch tall piece. That's going to go across the back here. And obviously you can glue them down in whatever order you want. Oh my gosh, there's so much cat hair all over this. Gosh, I can't escape it. She hasn't even been in here today. Okay, and then so the top, the flap section is gonna get a 3 inch tall by 7.5 or by 7 inches wide. And so you just want to make sure that when you're gluing it, you're lining up these edges. And I'm just eyeballing it. It does not have to be perfect. Yeah, if you follow me for any length of time, you know that perfection is not my forte. So same with this, just get it down there. You just want to make sure that there are gaps at the top and bottom. let's see, so this one. So I'm gonna have to take, or I'm gonna glue it just right on top of my line, but you'll see once there's a gap here, that line there won't matter. Okay, so now I'm to this. So this is going to be the top flap, this will be the back, and then this will be the inside. If you can see, it's starting to come together now. So I'm just going to put one of the Peltex pieces here, and then two get stacked on top of each other, and they go here. This is just going to provide some stability to the wallet once it's all done. But again, so the important part of this is these gaps here, not necessarily the lines. Which I probably drive you crazy if you're OCD or, you know, super precise, because I'm not. So I'm just going to glue the second piece right on top of the first one. And the reason there's two here and not two here is because on the interior top, this wrist strap piece acts as the second piece. So you'll notice once the wallet's all done, this is going to be nice and stiff at the top, but in order to create the nice stiff bottom section here, which that'll fall in between these two lines here, we need two. All right, so now that we have all of those glued, you can see how it's going to take shape and create that cool rectangular shape. And before you start gluing, you can just kind of lay it out and see. So wrong side up or wrong sides together, you lay your flap on the flap part, and then you can see how it's all going to lay together. So I'm going to put glue here, starting at the flap. You can start gluing from the bottom if you want to. It's, you know, dealer's choice, whatever you want to do. The goal is to get the interior glued to the exterior. So I'm just going to be super aware of where my raw edges are. I want them to be as lined up as possible. You see, first pass, that was a terrible job. So I'm just going to peel this back off and redo it. Oh, yeah, okay. So once you get the top flap area nice and even, you can start to work your way down the rest of the wallet. Again, just watching your edges, making sure that everything is nice and even. Once you get to the bottom, you might find that there's a little bit of overlap on either the interior or the exterior, and that's fine. We're just going to trim it down. Yep, see, so I've got some overlap here on my interior piece, and that's fine. I'm just going to glue into place, and then I will cut that down before I sew. So this is what you want it to look like. This, where your Peltex pieces are, should be as close to being directly under your zipper pouch as possible, because once it's done and we start folding it, it's going to create that bottom, that boxed bottom there. It's not all the way dry, so I shouldn't be pushing it around like that because it's just moving everything. But okay, so now that we're here, I can cut out my corners so that they match. And then I'm just going to cut this excess off as well. I'm just going to peel and restick this because it's not quite far enough. There we go. Okie doke. So we are almost done. What we need to do is we need to measure from the zipper pouch And we're gonna measure our stitch line. So I'm gonna flip the zipper to my left, and I'm gonna measure a 1/2 inch from that stitch line and draw. And then I'm gonna turn it and do the same thing on this side. There we go. So that's going to create that boxed bottom edge. So what it's going to do though is it's going to leave this open. So that's why you always see my edge painting, or me edge painting mine. But if you want to and you have rivets small enough, you can rivet right there as well. I'm getting ahead of myself. So now that we have our lines drawn, what we're going to do is we're going to move to the machine, and I'm going to start stitching on the top right over here. Stitch down. I'm going to back stitch really well when I go over this join. And I'm going to stitch across my line, back up, back stitching well, and across. And then I'm going to fold my zipper pouch down and do the same thing over here, stitching on the line that's drawn there. All right, so I got the top section stitched. Just gonna trim my threads here. So you can see where I stitched along that 1/2 inch line, up and around. And then now I'm gonna flip this up and stitch here. So something that you wanna be careful about is if you're using, or if you have metal on your bed, these snaps are gonna stick to this. So just, that's something to be aware of. So here we go. You can see it's all nicely top stitched. You can see that this bottom section is left open. And so this is what I was talking about before. You can use little rivets on either side of the zipper if you'd like to. Or what happens is whenever I finish mine, here's one that's almost ready for the edge coat color, but this is the edge coat dense base coat. And so whenever I'm base coating, I just kind of fill that hole in, and it creates that nice boxed bottom. So if you're not going to do edge coat and you're going to use glue, just as you're gluing it, put glue down into that hole, and then take some clips and just clip them on either side like that until it dries, and then it'll create that nice boxed edge. Okay, so the last step to finish the wallet, besides finishing the edges, which I'm not going to show you here, I have another video on my channel if you want to see that. But I would just go back and trim. You can see I have some overhanging, so I'm just gonna go back and trim all of that up so that it's nice and even. It's hard to trim and film at the same time without putting my head in the frame, so I apologize if I just did that. I will go back and do that later when I'm not filming, just to make sure that it's nice and even. And so the last step to complete the wallet is we need to just make our wrist strap, which if you've ever made a wrist strap with me, then you know exactly what I'm gonna do. So basically you take your wrist strap, you're gonna fold it into thirds. So I'm just gonna do an eyeball here into a third. Then I'm going to take some bobby pins and pin it together. All right, so I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to top stitch around all 4 sides. Alrighty, so I got it all top stitched, and then on the side that I didn't start on, I'm going to cut my little corners. And then you take your lobster clasp, and I'm doing it so you can see my fold is here. So I'm doing it to where the fold's going to be on the inside of the wrist strap. But so you insert one short raw edge into here up to 1 inch. So if you want to, you can mark it. I just kind of eyeball it as always. Slide it to there, kind of pinch it between your fingers, and then put the excess in between these 2 layers here, like so. And then we're just going to punch a hole in it and put a rivet. And then set your rivet with whatever tools you have. All right, so there is the wrist strap. And here is our wallet.